Hello, listener, and welcome to a special adventure review episode of 2 Weeks, One Shot, a tabletop RPG variety podcast. That is right. Your ears do not deceive you. This is a special adventure review episode where we will take a quick look back at the one shot we just played and discuss the system we played it in before we go into things we liked about the adventure, stuff the players missed, and what we learned during our time at the virtual table. I'm joined today, as always, by my quote-unquote friends. Introduce yourselves, everyone.
Hi there. My name is Harold. You might know me as the smell in your kitchen. I played Grotanks. I performed Grotanks. I was Grotanks. I am Grotanks.
I'm John, and I played Arcadius Huff.
I'm Brian, also known as Helix Missionary, aka the Buttlord, and I played Rel with Pale Eyes.
So our last adventure, titled The Deepest Blue, was played in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which primarily uses d20s along with skill modifiers to determine the effectiveness of checks and actions as the players progress through the game. So why don't we real quick go around the table and just give some quick thoughts about the mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons 5th editions.
Just to start us off, I think one of the great things about 5e in particular, both, compared to other versions of D&D and as an RPG system in general, is that it's really straightforward, but also very adaptable with how it works. And I think that they struck a really great balance with that between the simplicity of like the D20 and the ability score system, but then you have your proficiency bonus that is, just a single other number you're adding to things. But it leaves all of that room for, combining different options and skills versus abilities versus saves and different ways to bring that in. So it gives players a lot of freedom for how they're tackling things, but a simple way to do it, no matter what it is.
I mean, I feel the same. Like, I came into role-playing games on a different system, and 5e I only started playing like a year ago, and I really like it. It's a lot more streamlined. And that lends itself to just getting things up and running like really fast, but without like losing any depth.
Yeah, I like the 5e Dungeons & Dragons system a lot. And I think mostly because I understand it. That really helps a lot. I mean, like playing other role-playing games, they're not to crap on it, but there's a reason why I think D&D is probably the entry point for a lot of people. The system is very accessible and it's uniform throughout the whole thing. Like if I want to play an Aasimar, whatever that is, and a Warlock, or if I want to play a Tiefling Rogue, like the mechanics on my end is going to be pretty much the same in terms of dice and all that other stuff. And I think the other thing too is, I know probably that our audience knows D&D really well and probably started like a lot of us here on a different system. I know I started on 3.5, I think. No, I started on 3. I was that generation.
Yeah, same here, actually. I started with 3.0 and then 3.5 came out and made it better. And then we don't talk about things for a while, and then we had 5e.
I'm going to age myself here, date myself. I'm going to date myself here and say that my brother got me in on D&D on version 3, which was really complicated, and I had to have somebody like Sherpa me into the game. And 3.5 was a cool update that was exciting. It got me into the game. And version 4 was really discouraging, I think, for a lot of people. So when they came out with version 5, I think it created just those small changes that they've made to make it more accessible has, I think, obviously created a lot of excitement in the game.
Harold, I didn't know you and I were the same person.
So I'd agree with pretty much the same points that everyone else is making, the accessibility of it. It's really, right, the D20 system is the classic kind of prolific tabletop system. You, as a player, already when you think of tabletop games, a lot of people, whether Dungeons and Dragons is your first system or not, right, the D20 is kind of that iconic thing. So the system built around it, I think, is again, like everyone's saying, very accessible, very easy to understand. Maybe that initial jump into it. If it's your first system, right, you might have a rough 2 or 3 first sessions, but it's definitely one of those things. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And while that might be obvious for most things in life, there are certainly other tabletop systems that's sometimes not the case. And I'm looking at you, Shadowrun 4th edition. No matter how many times I play you, I'll never know. as we all know, Dungeons and Dragons, and as we've all mentioned, it's gone through several iterations before it arrived at its 5th edition. And many of those changes have dealt with the aforementioned accessibility to the rules and making it easier to learn and just more streamlined from earlier editions. So going back to when you all first got into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, what did you think about the learning process for the game?
You know, I got into it being a DM, and I came from Pathfinder as my main game. I think that was 3.5 or 3rd edition. But it was a lot easier, and it struck me as, wow, this is easier for me, and like a lot of concepts are very similar, but teaching like 2 or 3 new players was really easy, and it was really easy for them to pick it up. And it allows you to do things where like, okay, they don't need to play a super complicated character. Like, we can ignore some of this stuff. It gives you the tools to get up and get going really fast. And I really like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was saying it before, like just the ability for you to play pretty much whatever you want is really great in this particular version of Dungeons and Dragons. Like back in the day, I was one of those weird kids that really wanted to play like a half dragon, dragonborn like character. And I struggled so much in trying to figure out how exactly to make a character like that in version 3.5 and breaking the rules to make it happen. Version 5 is ready for you. Like, you want to make a half dragon dragonborn thing? No problem. You want to make a drow that's actually really soft and into butterflies? No problem. On that point, though, I have to say that some of the accessibility makes it kind of where I don't want to play it. I'm like, it's too easy. You made it too simple for me. And yeah, so I find it's almost like a challenge to make even more interesting characters in this new version. I'm trying to figure out ways to like break the mold even more.
You know what? I actually have to agree with you there, Harold. So, for example, I think one of the things that really got diluted, I also started off in 3.5e. One of the things that got diluted going from 3.5 over to 5e is just feats in general. Feats in 3.5 were these really amazing abilities that you got that were very, very diverse. And in 5e, it's just like add 2 to an ability score modifier, or, hey, you now have a proficiency with heavy weapons. It's nothing that I'm not gonna sacrifice increasing an ability score at level 4 or 6 to get a feat in 5e for sure. But circling back around to the original question, like my first time in 3.5e, it took me like 5 days just to make one character, right? But every time I did it after that, it only took like 2 hours max, right? And it's the same thing for 5e. So I think, if you're coming into tabletops and you're looking for a good entry point, 5e is not a bad place to start. Off to you, Assmaster.
Yeah, Assmaster here. 5e is a really good, I think, entry point. It's become an ideal entry point for a lot of new players, not only to D&D, but to RPGs in general, but especially to D&D. 5e is super helpful because of everything that we've already mentioned, right? It's so streamlined. It really lets you play a lot of different options. I would say that probably the 2 big humps with it that I notice when, I've played a lot with new people. I've introduced a lot of new players to the system and to RPGs in general. And the 2 big things I notice are, one, what you mentioned with feats, where, sometimes they don't feel like as big a deal as they should. And I think that's something that trips up a lot of us who came from earlier D&D editions specifically. But along with that, I think one of the big humps with 5e is just what I call the level 3 problem, which is where so many classes, you get really what you're doing with that character at level 3. And so I think it's a big thing that, a lot of the time when I start a game, even with brand new people they've never played before, I say, let's start at level 3, just so that people can have everything that they want to have. So I think that's really the only issue that it has, but that's easy enough to fix.
So before we close out our discussion on the game system, any last comments that you all might have on the availability of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? How easy it is to find, or how just widely available it is in stores? Any thoughts you all might have on that?
Man, what a brave new world. I mean, just the fact that I got all the D&D books on my cell phone, and I think they're official PDFs. I'm pretty sure I'm not a pirate. People gave them to me, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really it's come such a long way. I'm so excited to be participating in the D&D community, playing D&D right now. Who knew that like this like, you know, this game would be able to kind of keep up with us. And it's made me very excited to see what they come up with next.
Yeah, I mean, as far as availability goes, it really can't be beaten in my mind. I mean, there is so much digital support for the game between D&D Beyond and, you know, PDFs that you can get, you know, to have access to it basically wherever you go. It's in like every bookstore that I know of any size has D&D books now, which is wild. You can find them on Amazon, eBay, you know, wherever you buy stuff. And especially for, you know, if you're just trying to get into it and wondering where to start, I'm going to tell literally everyone, even if you've been playing this game for years, if you don't already have the beginner's box, go get it. Go get a copy of the beginner's box. It's like $20 and it has like all of the basic rules you need. It doesn't really water things down. It's just the basic layouts of like the first 3 levels, and the adventure that comes with it. Lost Mine of Phandelver is like the icon. It is the best first adventure I can think of. It is so well done for new players, and it's a classic for experienced people, and it's going to be fun for your group no matter what.
I agree with every point you just made. I will give a counterpoint for what D&D Beyond is. I think there's certainly a lot that they could do better with that whole service. Just the fact that it's sort of tiered in the way that you can even make your character. You have to pay to access certain spells. You have to, if I purchase the book at a store, there's not some way for me to claim on D&D Beyond with even just a receipt showing, hey, I have purchased a Wizards of the Coast product and I should now be able to access it on this avenue. But I might get corrected for this, but I don't think Wizards of the Coast owns D&D Beyond. I think that's a separate thing, hence why it's weird like that.
They're partnered with them at least. I know that they are considered like an official source, and I agree. It's rough that if you buy a physical copy of the book or you get it from a different platform, it doesn't count there. But I do know a lot of people who, for that reason, they just do everything on D&D Beyond. They just buy the books on there, and then you do still have full access to all the material, and you can use it with their tools. It's just one of the other options.
True. There's a lot of nuance to it that I think could be improved. And just a quick thing to highlight. I know recently there's been a lot of work from the actual publishers themselves to sort of do away with problematic themes in fantasy settings and just problematic language in fantasy settings. I think that's great. I mean, to a certain extent, you as someone playing the game, right, you don't have to include that stuff if you're running the game. There's not something that forces you to, but it's great to see the publisher sort of taking steps in that direction.
So I don't have much else to say. I think everyone covered pretty much everything. I think as far as availability, I'll just say this. My wife knew nothing and still knows not a whole lot about D&D. Until we released this podcast, she's finally starting to get it. And she bought me the beginner's box for my birthday. So it just, it's available to people that have no idea what's going on. It's at Target.
Dude, run that shit. It's good. I cannot stress enough how good that beginner's box adventure is.
Let's move over now to the actual adventure that we played, titled The Deepest Blue, run by me. Oh my God, did you have fun? Please tell me you had fun. It was trash. I'm the worst DM in the world. What were some of your favorite moments in the adventure?
None of them.
Oh God.
It was really good. No, I really enjoyed it. I think I really enjoyed the three brothers. That was a very fun time. And then as far as like just us interacting and doing stuff, something about the interaction that Arcadius and Rel had in episode 2, where we just started doing an improv game where we had an entire conversation just asking questions to each other. That was not at all like planned, but it just happened and it was really funny to me.
No, yeah, I really liked this adventure. It was a lot of fun, and it gave us a lot of like room for those moments. It gave you did a good job of like setting us up with this concrete scenario. But I know that we were joking about everyone gave you long backstories and everything for their characters for this one shot, but it gave us room to do that. It gave us room to play with that and have fun with that. I had this whole thing with Rel that never really made it in, where he had a master plan. I wrote it down. I shared it with Alex. It probably didn't come through in the podcast too much in the edited form, but Rel had like secretly planted himself at the mansion ahead of time. He knew a whole lot about what was going on. He had planned out the heist in his mind and how he was going to backstab the party and get away with it. So when, Frank called me out in episode 3 there about, you're going to betray us all, that was really a moment for me of like, oh shit, what do I do? No, I would never. And like just one little thing after another prevented that from happening. So unfortunately, the audience at home didn't get to realize quite what a bastard Rel was. But man, it was great trying to see that happen.
Yeah, talk about master plans. I think my favorite part was definitely watching your master plan. It's ending with the black eye get completely demolished by Jumpkin's romance scenario. Yeah, I have to say, what an ending! I had no idea. I mean, I just re-listened to the episode. I playing the game. I had no idea we were going to actually get to an ending. So, I mean, if you haven't listened to the 3rd episode, please take a chance to listen to that wonderful wrap up, because I spoilers. It's a happy ending. I had no idea.
I was pretty sure, like up to about 5 minutes from the end, that we were not going to pull it off.
My favorite part was how a little peek behind the kimono. Olina gives them an agenda that sort of told them, hey, there's going to be schmoozing at this time, dinner at this time, and then a band performance this time. And it was supposed to kind of dictate a little bit of where you all's plan went. And then you all got there and you all just immediately dispersed. The rule number 1 of D&D is never split up the party. And it is the first thing you all freaking did. And it's
the first thing every party does.
No, it's the first thing you all do. Okay. Now, my favorite segment in this section, things that you all missed. Okay, there was supposed to be a whole other gang that you all were supposed to interact with.
I was getting a sense of that from the reveal with Danielle, the piano player, showing up and being like, I have the other insignia. Like, whoa, okay.
If you all had gone to have dinner with the other attaches, you would have encountered a whole other group of folks who is the band that Danielle was supposed to be performing with, and they were supposed to give you not very musician vibes, and then you were maybe going to have some sort of conflict with them on the way out as you all fight for the sapphire. That didn't happen.
This is way too much nuance for us.
The other thing, the Marquis was supposed to be going mad over the death of his wife, which I didn't do a good job of really illustrating that. I think the most I mentioned was once Grotanks is charming the Marquestress, she mentioned something about her mother. Right. That's the smallest clue I ever threw out. But there was an opportunity to essentially, she would tell you about her mother. She would take you to another one of those crests, and you were supposed to find it out on the graveyard on her gravestone, right? And that was supposed to be a whole thing. And the last thing,
I thought the Marquis was just a wacky guy.
Yeah, how about that?
We weren't going to do any of that.
No, we ran out of time for everything. The big thing you were supposed to find was, once you got to the servants' quarters, you're supposed to learn that the Marquis servants were going missing. That he was killing the servants and turning them into a flesh golem of his wife. And the sapphire was a like soul stone phylactery kind of thing. None of that happened. None of that.
We didn't do any of that.
We left a whole lot of shit back there in Grimfall.
Poor DM, man.
We saved those servants.
No, we didn't. We did not at all.
You all were like, I got to get Jumpkin slayed, and then I got to get these 3 brothers to kill each other. And none of that was my intention.
You know what, Alex? Now that you've revealed that, I feel a lot less terrible about offing that one servant in the back room, because I saved him from a much worse fate, honestly.
You did.
I think we're never going to go down this road on the very day you allowed your brother to play a squirrel. That was when it happened.
It's true. I was the author of my own undoing. All right. Before we close things out, let's go around the table one more time and talk about lessons learned during this adventure. what we can apply to our next season of one shots once we start recording again. So I'll go first. I think once you are the person running the adventure, you can move the party forward through the adventure. Do not be afraid to kind of push them out the door a little bit, so maybe they don't talk with the opening NPC who's just establishing the groundwork for 40 minutes, right? A 10-minute interaction can be done much faster.
I think that's definitely one, is adaptability, because I mean, and that's any game that you're going to do. If you're going to run it, you got to change things up because your players are going to do things that you did not plan for or think of.
No, yeah, I would agree with you guys. And I think one thing that this adventure showed us, sort of two things that work together, and they seem at odds, but I think they can go together really well, is on the one hand, we want to keep it loose, right? Where we had like this sort of opening setup of here's what you're doing and, you know, go for it. Have wiggle room for people to try different things. But at the same time, I think something this adventure did and that future adventures can do not better, but more strongly, is having, you know, really concrete goals and objectives. So like for this one, we had like our end goal was we got to get this sapphire, and the objectives leading up for that were, you know, get the insignias, figure out where they go, grab the sapphire, figure out a way out, right? And so I think for future, you know, adventures and seasons, having that really, you know, concretely in mind for every adventure is really useful for a one-shot format.
I'm really surprised, not surprised. I am. It's very obvious that like the one-shot aspect of the way we be playing this game really demands that we are like in the moment in this game, like, and how we play. And that's kind of exciting because you know, I like making characters. I like making backstories, which is kind of the fun exposition-y part of D&D, but it's dumb. It's dumb. It takes you out of the moment. It takes you away from the mission. It really was kind of illuminating just you know, yeah, that experience of being sort of trapped in the game and just kind of rolling with it. It's fun.
It's a really neat and different way to play a game. Definitely. All of you at home, do a one-shot sometime.
Thanks for tuning in to this special episode of 2 Weeks One Shot, a tabletop RPG variety podcast. Make sure to join us next week on Tuesday, March 16th for the start of our next adventure. Check the episode notes to find links to our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and join in on the conversation with hashtag TWOScast. That's TWOS cast. See you soon.